Welcome to the Voices of the GESDA Summit, and welcome to Niva Elkin-Koren. You are professor of law at Tel Aviv University. You participated in a panel today on how we can bolster democracy through technologies. What was your main message?
So basically, the main message was that democracy nowadays is in decline, and it's not in decline due to technology. And the second message was that technology is not the solution for the decline of democracy. So that there are other factors that are playing in this sphere related to economics and politics and immigration and even climate change. But technology is definitely playing a role in this particular type of declines that we see nowadays. And this role requires us to sort of reimagine some of the social institutions that we now have in democracy that are focused on checks and balances, but are targeting people that are making decisions. Whereas in the digital environment, a lot of decisions are being made by algorithms, especially nowadays with the rise of artificial intelligence and the opportunities for governance by AI. We have a lot of decisions that are actually driven by data and applied by algorithms, and they require different types of institutions than the one we had in traditional liberal democracies.
But from the outside looking in, we have the feeling that technologies have a huge influence on the shift of power that we've seen globally. Is that your view too?
That is true, and that you probably refer to the rise of digital platforms that are playing an important role, and that is part of the power shift, so that if you develop algorithms that are governing human behavior, then you, the private sector that is controlling this huge amount of data and are able to innovate using this data to train machine learning systems, you have more power than others that do not have access to this data. So we see that in commerce, in companies like Amazon. We see that in social media platforms. But we see it in other types of emerging technologies where those who actually control the mass amount of data are exercising more power at the global sphere, but also in different national jurisdictions.
How concerned are you about this phenomenon, and what can we do about it?
So I think that we are in transition. I think one of the problems that we are facing in democracy that are related to technology is a mismatch between the social institutions that we had, for instance, separation of powers, or the rule of law, or traditional, old-fashioned civil liberties. A mismatch between that and the new challenges technology is actually introducing. And I think that the big challenge in this transition is to design new institutions, to innovate new ways of intervening with the technology, creating new types of auditing, enabling judicial oversight at the scale that social platforms are working, or enable some sort of friction between different types of decisions that are being held by social media or by digital platforms that are involved in other sectors. I think a lot of the focus in recent discussions about democracy is focusing on digital platforms and social media, but we also have some other players in this sphere that are developing predictive policing or risk assessment systems that are being used by courts or by municipalities. So on the one hand, I'm optimistic in the sense that I see, this is sort of, it's a very rich and innovative ecosystem. I think over the past couple of years, I think policymakers have realized that there are barriers to competition in this field, and that more public oversight and judicial oversight is necessary. And therefore, we have a lot of legal reforms that are being introduced both in Europe and in the United States. At the same time, I am worried about some other phenomena, such as the increasing synergy between governments and digital platforms in law enforcement initiatives, like in, for instance, filtering for allegedly inciting materials that support terrorism, or identifying criminals. All of these are actually creating some risks to free speech and civil liberties on the one hand, but also make governments reluctant to regulate these platforms. And so this type of collaboration between governments and digital platforms is a source of concern. But I think that overall this is a transitory period. And I think the more we learn about the affordances and risks involved in this type of technology or the new emerging technologies, the better we do in addressing them.
Thank you very much for this very interesting talk. Thank you very much, Niva Elkin-Koren, and we'll see you soon for more voices from the GESDA Summit.